for being with me here. Today we'll be seeing Hungary's signature dish, beef goulash, with its cultural aspects, ingredients and recipe. By the end of this video you'll also know why bell peppers and paprika are such essential ingredients of Hungarian cuisine, and how to prepare your goulash at home in true Hungarian tradition with CSIPETKE, the homemade pinch noodles that Hungarians take with it. The tips within the recipe will help you avoid the most common difficulties when preparing the dish. First, we'll see a bit of the history that led to the dish, its ingredients and some tips. Then, the recipe and more tips. And by the way, if you enjoy tips in videos, please write yes in the comment section. So, throughout its history, Hungary was time and again a bridge over different points and cultures due to its geographical situation within Europe. A land of encounters as well as conflicts, with its middle course of the Danube a ceaseless battlefield where Romans, Huns, Germanic, Turks, Slavic peoples, Magyars and many others clashed for centuries on a regular basis. Through a complex process, the Huns, a nomadic people that had originally lived on animal husbandry to the south of the Aral Sea, started moving north and west when harsh climatic changes and high temperatures resulted in a considerable reduction of water supply and grass to their cradle land, transforming it into a semi-desert. By virtue of many factors, they arrived in today's Hungarian plains in the late 4th century AD, and, with the blessing of Rome, gained peaceful control of several areas surrounding the Carpathian Mountains and the rivers Danube and Tisza. Many of these areas are still in Hungarian territory today. The Romans favored the Huns because they helped them combat the Germanic peoples that were attacking them, and the local populations accepted them because the transfer of power had been peaceful. So, Roman dominion was liquidated and the Huns had 3 successive kings. Even after them, they succeeded in keeping their links with the land in the following centuries. Nomadic pastoralism, use of cauldrons, mastery with horses, butchering animals from the herd for the daily diet are all aspects that are believed to have survived in Hungarian traditions due to this Hun legacy, or to that of the Magyars. In any case, they are also related to today's dish. The other key historical reference for today's dish is the 16th century invasion of Hungary by the Ottoman Empire as it resumed its expansionist policy, essentially from 1520 to 1566, when, under Soliman the Magnificent rule, the Ottoman Empire reached its maximum expansion. The Ottoman Turks ruled over Hungary for a century and a half, following their victory over the Hungarians in the Battle of Mohács in 1526. In 1566, and aged almost 72, Soliman himself died in Hungary of natural causes on the eve of the Battle of Szigetvár, another Ottoman victory. His death sparked a slow but steady 4th-century process of decline of the Ottoman Empire. As part of this process, Hungary fell under Habsburg rule in 1699 until the end of the First World War, when it finally became effectively independent. So, let's move on to today's recipe and its ingredients. Goulasleves, or goulash soup, is arguably the best known Hungarian dish abroad, with 2 essential ingredients of Hungarian cuisine: paprika, which is extracted from bell peppers, and meat. Goulash, in Hungarian, means both the herd and the herdsman, and leves means soup. So, goulasleves, in Hungarian, literally means the herdsman soup. Here's my first tip. The dish is a soup, not the thick stew often seen abroad. The thick stew is called a pörkölt in Hungary, a totally different dish. The meat the herdsman would use came of course from the animals they tended to, and this is why the dish has taken their name, a reminder of its origin and their activity. Therefore, another tip. True goulasleves is prepared with red meat only, because those were the animals they tended to. Instead, goulash prepared from poultry, other meat or bones is called hamis goulash by Hungarians, that's to say, fake goulash. In fact, during grazing, transhumance, or while taking their cattle to be sold in different fairs across Europe, the Hungarian herdsmen would often kill an old animal that had been included in the herd for that purpose. Other methods included carrying dried meat or allowing it to hang under their saddle. But the meat came always from the herd, a technique acquired from the Huns, the Magyars, or both. Finally, you may also hear the word bogres goulash. It means goulash cooked in a hanging cauldron, bogres in Hungarian, when they prepared it in the fields over an open fire. Then, the other essential ingredient for goulash are bell peppers and paprika. Through this video, I'll be making the distinction. I'll use paprika only to refer to the spice. Otherwise, I'll be saying bell peppers or peppers. Even if today they're one of the world's best-known ingredients, bell peppers originally come from the Americas, and Europe was unaware of their existence until the discovery of America in the late 15th century. Until then, the main spices for the wealthy classes in Europe had been pepper, cinnamon and ginger, all of them too expensive for the poor. When Columbus arrived to America, bell peppers were common for populations throughout, from South America to Mexico and the Antilles. In 1494, Dr. Chanca, Columbus's companion during his first 2 voyages, specifically mentions that the local populations had a spice they called ají, which they used to season fish and fowl. This word, taíno in origin, is now part of the Spanish language. The taínos had spread from North and South America to the Caribbean islands. The Aztecs, on the other hand, used the word chili in Nahuatl, their own language. Again, a word still in use in several modern languages. Clearly, bell peppers were familiar enough to have been incorporated with independent words into different native languages across the continent. Columbus and his men immediately noticed the similarity in use with the pepper known in Europe until then. This similarity is obvious in the words adopted for the new product in the different European languages. Pepper, bell pepper, pimienta, pimiento, poivre, poivron, etc. So, Columbus took the peppers back to Spain, from where they spread through the Mediterranean, including to the Ottoman Turks, who, in turn, introduced them in Hungary through the invasion. Then, from Europe, they spread through trade or through the different empires. Once in Europe, the use of peppers varies according to social categories. Peasants, as soon as they have access to them, plant them in the vegetable gardens for their daily cuisine because they find them such an easy crop, adaptable to most soils and climates, with seeds keeping the germinative capacity for years. So, practical and cheap. This adaptability, by the way, explains their latter dissemination to other continents as well. Aristocrats, instead, will at first bar from their tables the cheap popular pepper and use it as an ornamental shrub for their gardens because of the perceived exotic beauty of the colorful hanging fruit, to the point they call it garden coral. It will only appear on their tables later on when, during Renaissance, tastes in food changed to milder flavors than the spicier ones that had been so popular during the Middle Ages. A new boost for peppers will come during the 19th century at 2 different times. At the beginning of the century, Napoleon's continental blockade on English goods from 1806 to 1814 makes traditional pepper hard to find, and populations resort to peppers as a natural substitute for the missing product. The second important development comes from Hungary, when, during the second half of the century, the Palfi brothers from Szeged discover a way to industrialize the production of sweet paprika by mechanically removing from the peppers the seeds and white veins responsible for heat and flavor. This will allow Hungary to produce its renowned spice and quickly export it around the world. To this day, the best Hungarian producers are in 2 towns south of the Great Hungarian Plain: Goulash, close to the Danube, and Szeged on the river Tisza. In Szeged, you'll find 3 grades: first, second and third, where the first grade is the top quality. In Goulash instead, some of the famous varieties might be Goulash Oronia, that's to say the gold of Goulash, and another of the famous varieties is called GULYASLEVES. Both of them are very famous for their delicious flavor, their color and their excellent quality. So, if you're ever in Hungary, these are some of the varieties I would suggest you taste. Szegedian bell peppers, however, played once again a fundamental role when, in the 20th century, Dr. Szent-Györgyi, a scientist and professor from the University of Szeged, was awarded the Nobel Prize of Physiology and Medicine in 1937 for having discovered vitamin C, its antiscorbutic and other physiological effects in fresh red peppers. He had been trying for almost a decade to isolate vitamin C from different raw vegetables in his lab without success. One evening, while at home, his wife served him for dinner a raw bell pepper salad he didn't really fancy. He found a perfectly elegant excuse in the fact that he hadn't yet analyzed raw bell peppers for vitamin C and took his salad to his lab to have it tested. By the end of the evening, he had identified, isolated and extracted vitamin C for the first time in the world and discovered that its concentration in raw peppers, not in paprika, was at least 3 times higher than in lemons. The story of his Nobel Prize doesn't finish here. A couple of years later, as World War II broke out, he donated all of the money from his Nobel Prize to Finland and to the Hungarian volunteers that had traveled to fight for the Finns in the Winter War after the Soviet invasion of Finland on November 30th, 1939. He had a fascinating life during the war as well. He helped Jews escape Hungary, joined the Hungarian resistance groups, and finished the war hiding from the Gestapo and the Nazis from 1944 to 1945 after Hitler discovered that he had been sent by Hungary's Prime Minister to begin secret negotiations with the Allies, despite Hungary being officially aligned with the Axis. Shortly after the war, he moved to the United States, where he continued his scientific work and finally died in 1986. So, let me know in the comments below if you had heard about Albert Szent-Györgyi and if you already knew that the discovery of vitamin C in raw bell peppers used for paprika had resulted in a Nobel Prize for Hungary. If you'd like to know more about Turkey's and Soliman's influence on the history of food, make sure to check my episode on the history of coffee. Also, please tell me in the comments what your greatest takeaway from this video was today. And if you appreciated it, don't forget to hit the bell and like buttons, share and subscribe. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and see you next time.